Barb?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you all for being here. I'm getting a weird echo. Right, so do I open the public hearing?
Let's just wait to see if this echo has been fixed. It seems like it is fine. We don't have our city recorder here today, so we are recording, of course, but since she's not here, just for the record, we do have a full, excuse me, quorum. All 7 council members are present. And so you can move forward with opening the public hearing and going through the hearing procedure.
I will open the public hearing for app 2025-100 for a 9-unit multifamily complex in the C2 zone for Best Care Treatment Services, Inc. Right. So I'm opening the public hearing regarding a land use application from Best Care Treatment Services, app 2025-100, which was originally denied by the Prineville Planning Commission. The applicant filed a notice of appeal, and the city council made the decision to hear this appeal de novo. The council's job is to conduct public hearings for the purpose of making land use decisions and or recommendations according to the ordinances and laws of the city of Prineville and the state of Oregon. The council may not vary from the adopted laws and ordinances. If a law or ordinance is considered to be unfair or unworkable, there is a process to amend the ordinance. All city land use ordinances must meet minimum standards of enabling state statutes and administrative rules. All applications being heard tonight are being weighed against the law and ordinances in effect at the time the application was filed. A copy of this procedure, tonight's agenda, and copies of the staff reports are available at the entrance. And briefly, our procedure will start with the applicant's presentation pursuant to our code. Staff will then present the planning staff report and additional comments since the staff report was written. All staff reports were available to the public 7 days prior to the hearing and are automatically incorporated as part of the record. After staff, comments from other city, state, county, or federal agencies will be presented. The applicant and those in support of the applicant will speak first, followed by those in opposition. For those who are neutral but have questions, they will come last. The applicant is given the final rebuttal, at which time the public hearing may be closed, followed by council discussion and actions. Testimony from all concerned shall address the applicable law or criteria. So failure to provide testimony at this hearing or address an issue with sufficient detail to afford the hearings body and other parties an opportunity to respond will preclude a person from participating on an appeal to the city council or state land use board of appeals after that. The failure of the applicant to raise a constitutional or other issue related to conditions or approval with sufficient detail to allow the hearings body to respond will preclude the applicant from pursuing an action for damages associated with those conditions in circuit court. So when testifying, please approach the front of the room and state your name and address. If you represent someone else, please state who you are representing. This part too.
Mm-hmm.
So ex parte, contact, conflict of interest, and bias. So do any of the council members have a conflict of interest at this time regarding this?
No.
Has any member of the council members had any ex parte contact with the applicant or any member of the public?
You'd also disclose any site visits or tours that you may have done with proposal.
Okay. Has anybody done that?
No.
Are there members of the audience who wish to challenge any member of the council on any of the items on the agenda? If so, approach the microphone and state the bias. All right. None. The public hearing items. Next, we'll move to the public hearing agenda. And the first item is the applicant's presentation.
I believe we have Dave Peterson on the Zoom. I don't believe there's anybody in the audience from Best Care.
All right, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. So yes, my name is David Peterson. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Tonkin Torp. My address is 1300 Southwest Fifth Avenue,
Would you
Suite
please speak
2400.
up? I'm having difficulty understanding you.
Certainly. My name is David Peterson. I'm an attorney with Tonkin Torp. Can you hear me all right now?
I don't know if the audience can hear him, but it's pretty quiet up here. It's all.
Well, I don't know that I have any control over your volume.
No,
Closer to
no.
the microphone maybe helps.
Well, I'm wearing a set of earphones with a microphone literally an inch from my mouth.
Whatever you just did helped.
All right, I'll hold the microphone closer to my mouth. I will start over. My name is David Peterson. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Tonkin Torp. My address is 1300 Southwest Fifth Avenue, Suite 2400, Portland, Oregon. I represent the applicant, Best Care Treatment Services. Before I kind of jump into the meat of my proposal, I did want to clarify one thing that Mr. Beebe said at the beginning. This matter was originally appealed to the City Council back in July. The City Council declined to hear the appeal, which made the Planning Commission's decision the final decision of the city. We appealed that to the Land Use Board of Appeals. The city chose to voluntarily withdraw the decision for reconsideration, which is how we are where we are. I also will just briefly describe the project. I'm used to the staff going before I speak and describing the project, but since I'm going first, I'll just talk about it really briefly in terms of what it looks like. The applicant's architect, Mark Rossi, is also on Zoom, and he can answer any further questions about the design. This is a 10-structure project to be built on the site shown on page 2 of the staff report. And the layout of the project is shown on page 3. This is going to be nine clustered dwelling units with a 10th building that's devoted to restrooms and laundry facilities. The project will be built in 2 phases. First, 6 units closer to the rear of the site, and then the second phase is 4 units in the front. There's parking to the rear and also a trash enclosure in the rear. And the rear third of the site or so is not going to be developed as it's within a 100-year floodplain. So in the introductory statements that Mr. Beebe read, one of the things he said is that the city is obligated to apply minimum standards that enable state law. And the crux of the matter here, and the reason why the city council should approve this project, is because of state law. There's 2 state laws that apply here specifically. The first one is ORS 197A.400, and that statute is discussed at some length in Mr. Smith's staff report. I'll paraphrase it here, and I did submit a letter earlier today making my points in greater detail. I certainly don't expect that the councilors have read it by now, as it only went in about 3 o'clock this afternoon. So I'm going to summarize here the arguments that I make there. Anyhow, that particular state law is a housing law that requires that every local government in Oregon have a pathway to the approval of housing in their jurisdiction that applies purely clear and objective standards and conditions. And in this particular case, the city does not have any pathways for the approval of housing in this zone that applies a strictly clear and objective standards. The way your code is set up is that you have a provision, section 153.014, that ostensibly applies to all land use actions in the city, and sets forth a number of non-clear and objective criteria. By that, I mean criteria that are discretionary or subjective. So as the staff report discusses, because state law prohibits the application of those kinds of standards in the absence of a pathway that is purely clear and objective, the only code provisions that the city can apply to this application are those that are clear and objective in the code currently. And the staff report notes that as far as those clear and objective standards go, this project meets all of the clear and objective standards. And what am I talking about with clear and objective standards? I'm talking about things like setbacks, building height restrictions, density, parking, numerically measurable objective standards that would uniformly apply to all housing projects of the same type in the same zone. What the city cannot do is apply the discretionary non-objective criteria that were used by the Planning Commission to deny this project. And there were two such criteria that the Planning Commission used, both of them in Prineville Zoning Code Section 153.014. The first one is that the project was not compatible with the policies of the comprehensive plan. And the second one was that the project was not compatible with the stated purpose of the C2 zone. I don't want to go into great detail here about why those conclusions were in error, even if those criteria applied. You're welcome to refer to my letter from earlier today about that, because my primary contention is that those criteria, in fact, don't apply. So that's the clear and objective pathway argument. The other state statute that applies here is ORS 197A.445, and that statute requires the city to approve affordable housing. The staff report concludes erroneously that this project is not affordable housing, but in fact it does meet the definition of affordable housing in the statute. One of the types of affordable housing defined by statute is housing made available to persons with incomes below 80% of the area median income. This project is to be made available to Crook County residents that meet that income maximum, that basically fall below that median income of 80% of the area median income. It's going to be housing for people enrolled in mental health outpatient services at Best Care. It's important to note this is not a hospital. This is not an inpatient treatment facility. It's independent living for people that can come and go freely, just like the rest of us can, and who are receiving outpatient services from Best Care. There will be no rent, so necessarily the units must be affordable at no rent. The statute requires the owner to record a 30-year restrictive covenant, ensuring the continued affordability of those units, and the applicant here is willing to agree to record such a covenant. The staff report suggests two possible exceptions to the affordable housing statute applying here, but neither of those exceptions in fact apply. The first exception, which is set forth in the statute, doesn't apply because this property is on land that is zoned for commercial uses. That's one of the prerequisites to applying the statute. And the second one deals with the 100-year floodplain. It is true that some of this site is within the 100-year floodplain, but importantly, not the part that's going to be developed. The 100-year floodplain portion is in the back. The only part of the site that's in the floodplain that's going to be used is a little bit of the parking area and a trash enclosure. It's clear that the intent of this statute is to prevent cities from being forced to build affordable housing in floodplains. That's not what's going to happen here. This is all going to be built outside of the floodplain. So I am going to conclude my remarks there. I'm happy to answer any questions on the legal analysis. If you have any questions about the design of the project, Mr. Rossi is available to answer those questions as well. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions open just for council at this time?
Yes.
Yes.
Are there any questions for Mr. Peterson from council?
I do have questions, but I'm wondering if this is time or the council questions while on the record. Where would you prefer those?
If there are questions directed specific to his presentation, I would recommend them now. If there's some questions in general, then I would recommend them for later.
Okay. My My name is Steve Uffelman. I serve on the city council, and my question to you, because I have gone through all of your architectural designs and whatnot, nowhere do I see anywhere in those plans a record for an approved highway crossing. Can you tell me where the highway crossings are and how they are explicitly designed for highway crossing on a 45-mile-an-hour zone?
I assume you're referring to a pedestrian crossing?
Sorry, what's that?
Pedestrian crossing. Yes.
Yes, I'm talking about pedestrian crossing.
Yeah,
Clearly marked and identifiable and safe for all drivers and passengers and pedestrians.
I'm not aware that a pedestrian crossing has been proposed or previously
But
could
you
be
are,
conceivably be imposed on this project. I'll let Mr. Rossi respond as to whether that's been considered in the design process.
Can you guys hear me? This is Mark Rossi with Pinnacle Architecture.
Yes.
So when we spoke to ODOT on that one, the two existing driveway approaches were the only thing we had to deal with. We were not required to do any other design iterations off that highway. And through the design process with the city too, it never came up, nor were we required to design in a pedestrian crossing across that highway. So
let me reiterate my question. You're dealing with mentally ill patients who are going to be housed on the opposite side of the recreation facility and the medical facility, and you have not included any safe crossing designed for a 40-mile-an-hour speed zone on a highway. Is that correct?
we weren't required to. That's all I can say.
And Councilor Uffelman, you might make them aware, in case they don't know, that is a ODOT highway and facility. So
We did go through ODOT and they did not require anything.
So this is Councilman Brummer. I have a question or two. These houses are going to be available for anybody to use and not just the people that are in the best care facility?
No, that's not correct, but it's also not correct to say that they're in the best care facility. These are people, Crook County residents who are receiving outpatient mental health services from Best Care. I mean, Best Care is a medical mental health care provider, just like any other doctor provides outpatient services to any other patient with any other kind of medical need. But yes, you do have to be in Best Care's outpatient care in order to qualify to live in these units.
So calling this affordable housing, how does this help the people in the community?
Well, it's going to help Crook County residents who are receiving mental health treatment through Best Care, and it's going to be available exclusively to people with incomes below 80% of the area median income. So lower income Crook County residents who are receiving care at Best Care are going to be able to live in this facility.
But somebody that meets the income requirement and they're not in the facility, they're not eligible.
That's correct.
Okay, one other question. Are these portable houses? Can they be moved or are they stationary? Are they built on a foundation?
Mark, that's for you.
So these are stick-built homes built on a slab on grade. They're not like tiny homes or RVs that could be portable. So they're fixed buildings.
I didn't understand what
He
They're-
said
they're
that
on
they were
the-
fixed buildings, non-tiny homes and actually with foundations.
Okay, thank you.
this is Councilor Smith. In looking through your site selection considerations, you document that integrating residential housing for high acuity clients directly adjacent to the treatment facility was determined to pose potential safety and operational risks for both residents and staff. But yet, a facility that concerns me, that if that's a concern to be next door to the people that that are treating them and overseeing them could be a concern. It's darn sure a concern to me with the residents.
Mark, do you have any input on that particular analysis?
No, I'm not sure where that quote came from, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
I mean,
Real sure.
neither am I, but I mean, that's really beside the point. The point is that the city is obligated to approve both affordable housing and housing in general on this site under state law. And they would be similarly obligated to approve it on a site that was on the opposite side of the street. So just the fact that they've chosen this site versus the other site, I don't see how that relates to the applicable criteria.
So this is Counselor Hutchison. I have a question. It kind of ties into Scott's. It says, while no on-site staff will be stationed at the development, our main campus is less than 500 feet away, allowing for rapid response to any issues that may arise. My concern is if issues arise overnight or after hours, is the staff going to be available to do the rapid response? Like you state in your papers here?
Well, I mean, the answer is yes. I mean, they're only 500 feet away and there's 24-hour staff at Best Care and they will be available for rapid response. I think 500 feet away is pretty close by. But again, these last two questions kind of seem to be directed at the nature of the particular applicants, people who would be potentially living in this facility. And that's really getting away from the issue before this council, which is whether this is a housing project that meets the clear and objective standards of the zoning code, which it unequivocally does. So, you know, I would caution the city against making decisions that basically discriminate against people based on their medical condition.
Just for the record, I believe that the questions were not directed at any sort of medical conditions, but more for the safety concerns that the council has regarding this particular application. And that it was based upon actual material submitted by Best Care, which I understand that you do not, seems like you don't have. But just to clarify for the record, it appears as if the questions are due to safety concerns rather than any sort of discriminatory type questioning.
Well, I mean, the safety concerns are addressed in Best Care's application materials. There's going to be staff available 24/7, very close by to respond to issues as they come up.
And just to remind council, any decision made tonight needs to be based upon the applicable law and criterias and not on any sort of other type of evidence.
Are there any other questions from council on? Like, all right, Josh.
All right, Joshua Smith, Plan Director, City of Prineville, for the record. I will go over the project a little bit better in more detail on screen here and kind of get at what some of the questions from the council were talking about in regard to proximity and why those where their questioning was coming from was the project overview from Best Care itself. Application APP 2025-100, which was the appeal from the original applications, CU 2025-102. The proposal, as the applicant mentioned, it's 9-unit multifamily development. They applied for this as a housing development. It's not a patient development or something other than. They applied for it under the city code as a housing development, which is what kind of some of that confusion is going back and forth with is this a patient housing? Is this actual housing? The application is just for housing. Their overview of how they're going to operate is what's causing that confusion, I think. Applicable criteria, you can see it goes from the ORSs all the way through the city codes, comprehensive plan, the floodplain code. Those are all listed in the staff report. Neighbor notice for this went out on October 8th. Newspaper was published on October 21st. And the zoning for the property, as mentioned, is a C2 general commercial zone. And this is kind of the crux of the whole issue. This area of the town of our community has been commercial going back into the early 90s, probably earlier. Comprehensive plan going back into 1984. It's just been a commercial. It's on the highway. That's what it's designed for. There are areas of the zone that are residential. There are probably areas of this zone and even in this area along Studebaker and Dodson that probably should be residential. And we have discussed that changing some of those zones, particularly in the Studebaker area. But on the highway, there's always been this practicality that that should be commercially used and for highway commercial purposes. So that's when you're looking at the uses in those zones, there's an outright use for residential above ground for commercial, and there's a conditional use for what we're talking about today. Conditional uses have historically in this community prior to some of these state laws have always been discretionary, and that's why the Planning Commission acted as they did. This is the location. It's kind of a nice close-up. This is 2025, so this is very recent. Best care facility across the street, highway. The site over here, I'll show you the floodplain here in a second. You can see the proximity. You can understand kind of why the reasoning they want to do this type of housing. Some of the confusion is how this gets operated. I don't know those answers. I don't know the people that are going to serve here. The Best Care's overview doesn't show that. What the applicant is basically saying is that doesn't matter. We're talking about a housing development. How it gets used is somewhat irrelevant in this situation. And that's kind of the unintended consequences of the state laws that have passed recently. For example, they could literally buy this manufactured home park right there and just use it. And there wouldn't be any hearing, there wouldn't be anything and that's kind of their point, right? In this case, they're just trying to develop something brand new. We have talked with the applicant and what came up at the Planning Commission meeting many times that we would prefer this to be on their site. There's a perfectly vacant piece of property right there. And we've discussed this with Best Care over the last 2 years. They've been talking about doing this project. That is something that we would consider as part of a consolidation of housing and commercial development that we consider to be outright. In this case, they're doing a standalone multifamily, which is a conditional use, but because we don't have a clear and objective path in one section, they both become outright in a sense. I'll go into the little bit in that housing rules here at the end. Site description, most of you know it. It's that they did mow it. It was that weedy patch on the highway in between two different residential homes. And the property behind it is actually owned by the city due to the last flood in 98. And over here on the right, you can see the floodplain. This is where we're getting at that ORS 197A 445 that the city is stating does not apply. It is in the floodplain. The code talks about the property being in the floodplain, not the development. Therefore, that section simply doesn't apply for that reason and for others. Just doing a no net fill within the floodplain as required by the floodplain rules does not eliminate the risk of flooding. A 100-year floodplain is only a 100-year floodplain until it's not. So that is the reason the state usually excludes natural hazards from their rulemaking. And they did this specifically in 445 and 460, which is another affordable housing law. Big close up of the site plan so we can kind of see how this is developed. I kind of show this as a blow up to understand that if this was in a residential zone, we wouldn't even be here today. That is perfectly fine. Dimensional standards, everything is meeting our intentions for a residential development in the city. There's really nothing to discuss about that. We're not disputing that they don't meet those clear and objective standards. The dispute at the Planning Commission was simply they're not meeting the purpose of the zone and the reason we have that zone there. And I'll go through those standards in a minute. This is that house. It's basically a studio apartment, but not in an apartment complex. So they're individual. They're intended to be separate housing. You can see in their overview why they want to do that, for more control over individual patients, and so they're not interacting with each other as much, is apparently what they said. They are relatively small units. To the point of the council, are they portable? I think by the nature of the size, they could be, but they are on solid foundations and stick built. Density standards, so I list this for the presentation so you can just see these are our clear and objective standards, the one we actually apply to the development. densities, lot coverage, landscaping, open space, parking, setbacks, height limits. The development is meeting these criteria as a housing development. The city does not dispute that. They meet it because we worked with them to make them meet this. The problem is the zone. Public comments, we did receive one citizen comment in writing before this hearing, lots of verbal opposition. You'll probably hear some more tonight. Development comments were received from Crook County Fire, again, ODOT. We had a long conversation with ODOT about crossing. And what it comes down to really is that 9th Street and Gardner Road are considered unmarked crossings. Doesn't make it safe, but that's what they consider where people can stand at the corner and cross the highway. Everybody's supposed to stop, but no one will. And the DSL, Department of State Lands, commented on wetlands, which aren't on the property. So general findings is my last slide. So in general, multifamily development, city finds the applicant is meeting the site development standards. We don't dispute that, as I said. Original application was denied by the Planning Commission based on discretionary standards it understood it could apply. Historically, that's what type 2 conditional uses were in our community. These recent housing changes, 197A400, 197A445, 460, have altered those to not only do clear and objective standards in residential zones, which we already apply and have applied since 2017. It included commercial zones and in some cases industrial zones, which is just kind of completely out of bounds. The city doesn't have a chance to operate and update its code to meet those standards very often. So it's kind of like, what is the city community supposed to do when these are implied upon you? We are sitting in that situation where we weren't able to respond to the state code fast enough to understand what those rules were actually doing. It's a top-down approach. So the staff, my recommendation, as well as the guidelines I was receiving from the State Housing and Accountability Office, HAPO, we understood that we could still apply discretionary standards through 197A400. There was a thought process there. Under legal review, that thought process is likely would fail at a LUBA appeal. And that's where we're kind of sitting today. I still attend that 197A445 does not apply. Affordable housing, this is not really an affordable housing project. If it's operated the way Best Care has said they're going to operate it, I don't see that it's an affordable housing project. Now, if it's operated differently, it might very well be. But the floodplain alone kicks it out. So everything really hinges on 197A400. That's the code that decides what kind of standards can be applied and how. And what you're reading in the staff report is basically a position that while we would prefer to do it one way, those standards we would probably lose in an appeal and have a significant cost to the city. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Wendy really briefly. Wendy Kellington is our city's contracted land use attorney. She can go into that a little bit further. She might have some comments, and then we will take any questions from council and then move into public comment.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, staff, members of the audience. My name is Wendy Kellington. I am a land use lawyer and have been a land use lawyer and pretty much nothing else for the last 42 years. I've spent 6 years on LUBA as a part of that career, Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals. And so the city asked me to help them sort out all of these new laws and rules as they apply to this application. So state law has really changed a lot in the last few years, and the city's code has not kept up with those changes. And there are two important changes that I want to bring to your attention. One is this requirement that all of the standards, procedures, and conditions that are applied to approval or denial of the application before you, because it is an application for the development of housing. You know, it may be for disparate populations, it may or may not be affordable housing, but it is an application for the development of housing. And state law says that when you're talking about applications for the development of housing, that the standards, the procedures, and the conditions must be clear and objective. And state law makes, kind of holds a hammer on that. It says that that particular suite of words in 3 different statutes. And at LUBA, if you go up on a denial, it'll be incumbent on the city to prove to LUBA that your standards, conditions, and procedures can only be applied in a clear and objective manner. In other words, that there's no wiggle room. Your staff has told you that the city's codified standards that are clear and objective are all met here. If after hearing the testimony tonight, you agree that staff is right, that all of the clear and objective standards of the city are met, you must approve this application. And if you do not, if you go back up to LUBA, you expose the city to pay Best Care's attorney's fees. And that's just what the state has done. It's not anybody's fault, but it is what the law says. The other law that you need to be aware of is something called the codification rule. And so if the standards in your code, compel a particular result, maybe they say, that you have to have a 5-foot setback or something like that, that's a codified standard and you apply that. But if your code does not have a standard that there must be a crosswalk across the highway in order to provide connectivity between the proposed facility and the treatment center that will be the locus of the, I guess, mandatory treatment that these people will be providing, then you cannot use the application's lack of a crosswalk as a basis to deny the application. And why is that? Because that would violate the state's codification rule that again says that all of the standards and criteria that you apply to this application have to be ones that are codified in your code. The last set of rules I want to make sure are in your head is that the applicant explained this, and they're right, that the standards and criteria that can be applied are only those that were codified and in effect on the date the application was submitted. And so there's a rule against amending codes by interpretation. So if there isn't a standard in the code, but gosh darn it, if you were to stitch together kind of provisions in your code that you meant to include, that stitching together couldn't be applied. And why would that be? In addition to causing problems with the clear and objective standards rule, that would cause problems with the no change in the goalpost rule. So 3 things that I hope that I have explained, and then we'll get into a little bit of the detail before I sit down and shut up. So all of the standards and criteria that apply must be clear and objective. You cannot apply discretionary standards. The standards that apply must be codified in your code, and they have to have been in effect on the date that the application was submitted. Now, there is this sort of complicated dance about limited circumstances under which cities can apply standards that are discretionary, compatibility with the neighborhood, harmonious, those kinds of standards. But state law makes it very, very limited when you can apply those standards. You only get to do that if you have a certain key. So think of the discretionary standards hiding behind a door. And the only key that opens that door is one that's called Mr. Clear and Objective. It's not Mr. Clear and Objective because I waived a bunch of discretionary standards to make a clear and objective requirement. It's Mr. Clear and Objective. That's how we started out. So if you're Your code says that there's a type of residential use, and it's residential with off-street parking, I think.
Residential above commercial.
Residential above commercial, and has something to do with parking. And that there's this O in the chart for that allowed use, and it says that that's an allowed outright use. Yay. So that looks like a clear and objective pathway. The problem is, and the reason why you don't have that Mr. Clear and Objective key to open that door to apply the discretionary standards, is that another part of your code that you will want to revisit says that outright permitted uses have to be subjected to design review approval. And design review approval has standards like be harmonious and compatible. And these are standards that courts and LUBA have said in many, many cases, and you know, are not clear and objective, and you can't apply them. So your wonderful, apparently clear and objective pathway, darn it, it just isn't. It's a discretionary pathway. So that means you don't have the magic key to unlock the discretionary standards, and you must apply only clear and objective standards. And as the notice for this hearing said, what the relevant standards here are then are standards that are clear and objective. And the question becomes whether the testimony demonstrates that there is a clear and objective standard that applies here, that's codified, and that was codified before the date, or at least on the date that the application was first submitted, is not met. There's something about the proposal that doesn't meet that clear and objective standard. And so that's what you want to hear from your folks. You have heard, though, from your professional staff that there's none of those. Your professional staff has told you that all of the city's clear and objective standards are met. And if that's right, after you hear from everybody, then the only pathway that the city has that's lawful is approval. You wouldn't want to pay me to defend anything else at LUBA because I couldn't defend it. Now, I want to tell you that I strongly disagree with the applicant with regard to this affordable housing statute, this 197A 445. I don't think it applies. And it's not really the affordable housing element of it. I think they're wrong. But if you're not paying rent, I don't think that's affordable housing. But you don't have to worry about that statute, not that it helps much here, because this project is on a piece of property that is within the 100-year floodplain, and it does have elements of the development that are within the 100-year floodplain. And the statute is clear as day, and it says that it doesn't apply. This is that affordable housing, that 197A 445 one that I really don't think we need to worry about here, but they rely on it, so I'm going to talk about it. That one only applies to property that isn't in the floodplain. This is in the floodplain. And there are development elements in the floodplain. Now, where does that get you? Not very far, because that doesn't have anything to do with clear and objective. So what is my advice here? Hear from your citizens on, are there any clear and objective standards that are not met? And if you're persuaded that staff is right, that all of the clear and objective standards that apply are met, you must approve. And that's the end of it. But I will be very happy to answer any questions you have along the way, and we'll see how it goes. Do you have anything for me now?
I do.
Okay.
And this is kind of, I think it fits. It's a little bit of a reach. And can you tell me if new state law pertaining to affordable housing allows a development to restrict access from the general public, such as Best Care's proposal, to only allow this development to their outpatient clientele?
Yes. Yes,
It
there,
can.
yeah, there are a variety of federal statutes that protect the ability to restrict occupancy, whether it's 55 and older communities or communities restricted to certain kinds of care. residential, treatment homes. There's all different kinds, but the answer to your question is yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, well, I have trying to think how to word this. So did in the couple years since state laws have changed and every legislative session it changes, but what changed from the time they submitted their original application? Did we have a clear and objective pathway then?
So I'll answer that briefly. So that goes back to how we were interpreting the discretionary and clear and objective path. We were waiving our discretionary standards, which is what Wendy was talking about. And we're doing that because the laws keep changing so fast, and every year we stopped updating our code after House Bill 2021 or 2001 because they're just getting too significant. They're even going back and changing stuff we've already changed. So it's like, we'll just wait till they're done and we'll update it. That's the housing grant that I just applied for and received from the state. But at the time, we were getting guidelines from the Housing Accountability Office that you could simply waive your discretionary standards. Therefore, you have an outright path. Therefore, you have a discretionary path. That is something that has not been vetted at LUBA and where we likely would lose based on existing case law.
So if I can just embellish on that a little bit, this is so mind-numbingly confusing and complicated, and I'm sorry all of you are having to deal with it. The rule is you only get to apply clear and objective standards. You get a hall pass if you have a clear and objective pathway. You can then apply discretionary standards. And the pathway doesn't have to be one that, the applicant can meet. This best care proposal would not meet the housing above commercial, for example. But if that housing path were clear and objective, you could insist that they comply with it. And if they want to do discretionary, that's okay. And you guys get to do what you want to do. The third thing, though, that makes your question so insightful, I think, is that HAPO, the State Housing Office, told your staff, well, and if your standards are not clear and objective, you can and must waive the discretionary standards to make sure that you're providing a clear and objective pathway. And that feels really confusing, right? Because, okay, wait a minute. So if I have to have a clear and objective pathway and I can waive standards, can't I just make a clear and objective pathway by waiving standards and thereby have the right to apply a discretionary one? Are we on the same page about that? I mean, it's mind-numbing. But the answer is you have to have the magic key. So again, think of the door. Behind that door are the discretionary standards. And the only key that unlocks it is if you start out just pure as the day is long, clear and objective. Once you start waiving, that's a discretionary pathway, and you don't get to demand that the applicant accept discretionary standards. The applicant gets to rely on clear and objective standards unless, you have that very clear dual pathway and you have the magic key, and you just don't hear. And was it in effect? It was in effect, but this is so complicated and it's been changing so rapidly. I mean, you had a ton of changes just last session. I mean, I think your staff and your planning commission can be forgiven for not keeping up perfectly. And HAPA wasn't very forthcoming with the rules either. I think they didn't understand them. I mean, if you have to be somebody like me to understand these rules, it's really pretty sad, right? You should be able to just look at a set of state laws and understand what they say. And I'm really sorry to say that these are not like that. And that's why this kind of led to where we are today. Okay? Did I make it worse?
No.
No, thank you. But
I want to know where we stood a couple of years ago when they submitted their original application and how much
Well,
changed.
their original application was in this year.
Oh, was it this year? Okay.
February, I think, back when we first started. Now, they've been talking about doing it for a couple of years.
Oh,
but
okay.
The
So
application
the
came in this year.
application was this year, but laws still changed this year during our legislative session.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question. Was the applicant aware of the C2 requirement when they applied? Because like all attorneys, they know the answer before they ask the question. So did they know, and could they have shortened up this entire process by just
Yeah.
talking about it? And
So the way it looks to me, and Mr. Peterson can comment on it more to the extent it matters, I mean, but it looks like Best Care, had a consultant who, like many people, read the rules and, thought, okay, I've got to comply with these discretionary standards. And so addressed all of your discretionary standards. It looks like Best Care hired a lawyer, and it just seems like you need a lawyer to understand how this stuff is stitched together. Hired Mr. Peterson, who raised these issues, I think, for the first time in his notice of appeal, which is completely fair. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But I just don't think that these issues were raised at the planning commission, or they kind of came up at the end. And again, that's not a fault of Best Care. Many folks, when they want to get a development, they hope they can just hire a consultant. They hope they don't have to hire a high test, lawyer to figure out, what the standards are. So they apparently didn't know about all of this, but I can't fault them for that. It's just tough
I
stuff.
can add a little bit. So Best Care and the city, I was aware, I let them aware that there was a possibility of denial. At the planning commission meeting, the state laws were not brought up. So yes, it could have been shortened had they been brought up, because we would have then looked into those laws at that time. And that was when we were going back and forth with where I was with the HAPO office saying, is this okay to deny? And that's when I was understanding these two different discretionary paths, or an outright and discretionary path. So I felt I was comfortable doing that. And then on appeal, when the council declined review, we had all those comments from the HAPO office again, kind of confirming that path. We're like, okay, looks like we're safe here. And then when we went to Luba, that's when it got really serious and we grabbed Wendy. So that's what she's discussing. So.
But I have another question. I don't know if this is the appropriate time, though.
I don't know if it matters.
Does it involve the presentation that you heard?
No, not exactly. It would be something after. The question would be what happens next if this didn't pass? Is that relevant to?
That's relevant. Yeah.
Yeah. What happens if this is denied and it goes to Luba? What's the next step? I'm just asking if that was
Procedurally, the applicant would have the opportunity to appeal this to the Land Use Board of Appeals. So procedurally, that's what could occur. But am I misunderstanding your question? Your question is, what do you think would happen at that appeal?
not what do I think would happen? I think I know what would happen. What does happen? What's the next step in the
So I
process,
can answer
we
that.
say, if this doesn't pass here?
So if you were to deny, you would be obliged within 7 days to provide Luba with a copy of the decision, because this is just on reconsideration. So actually, the appeal is sitting up there on hold. They wouldn't even have to file a new appeal. They just, kind of reactivate the one they have. If you didn't file a decision, Luba would just reactivate based on the decision that was appealed before. And then the LUBA process would begin, and it's basically, city files a record, there's a record objection, that gets resolved because LUBA's review is only on the record. And then the petitioner, Best Care, would file a brief. I don't know that you'd want to spend money on me to file a brief, because I don't think I could defend it unless you found a clear and objective standard that isn't met. LUBA would make a decision. If you didn't find a clear and objective standard that wasn't met, they would reverse the city. Best Care would file a motion for attorney's fees. They'd probably get them. And yeah, that's,
But Luba would, the Land Use Board of Appeals would come in and say, yes, they're granted. their
yeah,
application.
they would reverse. They would reverse unless there's a clear and objective standard that applies that you find isn't met. And it's possible that one or more of your citizens will say, oh, wait a minute, staff didn't think about this standard, but this is a clear and objective standard, and I don't see any evidence about it being met. Maybe there's something like that staff's just missed so far. If there's something like that, I'll defend that all day long. I just don't know.
I know I'm kind of was thinking ahead. I just wanted to have that
Yeah.
in my
fair.
mind. What's going to happen if this goes to Luba? So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep.
So, any other from council? No. All right, so I think comments from city, state, county, or federal agencies. Jared, help me if
That's just anybody.
any-
This is anybody within the audience that represents any of those agencies, whether they be the city, state, county, or federal. If they wish to come up to make any sort of commentary, they're welcome to do so at this time.
Everybody looks at John.
The federal agencies I'm seeing don't seem to want to get up. Or county, excuse me. What's that?
So could we ask if the interim chief of police has any comments that he would like to address during this time?
Well, this would be a time where a city agency such as the Prineville Police Department could make comments.
Good evening, council, mayor, for the record, Shane Wilson, interim chief, Prineville Police Department. So for the record, I'm not a land use expert by any means. So the only thing I look at on the way this is laid out is just from a public safety standpoint for us. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's an apartment complex or what it is. There's a highway, state highway there. I think the speed limit's 45 right there. It does change at different points. So I guess just from a public safety, people crossing the state highway. I think Josh had mentioned 9th Street. I don't believe 9th Street and the highway have a crosswalk there if I remember, but I don't patrol out every day, so it could have changed. So just that we do have traffic issues out there. So from my only standpoint would just be from a public safety standpoint of the state highway there. Which is no different than any other state highway we have bordering us and different parts of Crook County.
Thank you.
Questions?
We will move on to testimony in favor of the applicant. So is there anybody in the audience that would? How do we, is there any, oh, sorry, yep, please.
And just prior to all public testimony, I also just prior to you speaking, in regards to both favor and opposition, if there's any sort of questions that this is for testimony in regards to either positive or against the applicant, if there's any actual questions directed at staff or even the applicant, I ask that staff or council just note those, and if you wish to ask them later during the record, you would. And so that's sort of how we would work the next couple of parts of the agenda. There actually is a neutral testimony and questions portion in regards to the public, but in regards to this testimony, both positive and negative, it's more of just that rather than a question type standpoint. So sorry to interrupt.
No, that's totally fine. My name is Camille Jones. I live at 940 Northwest 2nd Street, Apartment 6 here in Prineville. My first thing that I would like to bring up is that a lot of you are talking about the safety of Madras Highway. There are lots of people who live and walk there, including myself, and I get across the highway just fine. Using the laws like where streets cross, that is a crosswalk. People here in Oregon are really nice and they actually look out for us most of the time. Yes, you have your bad apples, but I would ask, what do the other people who live on Madras Highway do? And then also based on what I've been hearing in your questions from the council and your speaking, you are concerned about the people who are going to be living here in this affordable housing, which, yes, it is absolutely affordable housing, and I don't know how we don't see that we have people on the streets who need a place to live and who don't have the ability or don't look like the right people who can get the housing that is very limited here. And that I see there is a little bit of an objectification of people with mental health illnesses and substance abuse issues. And they are people who live here with us. They are our community and we need to support them. And this is going to be a huge stride in that direction. We need to have more housing. And I get it that we're afraid that it's going to change the way that Prineville looks, that we're afraid of more people coming here, but they're already here. We already have too many people and not enough houses, and it's a lot safer to have them off the streets and in a place where they can get help right across the street. And I think if I don't want to put words in Best Care's mouth, but I assume that the reason they said that they want to require them, the residents, to be in the program is so that the public can see that they're trying their best. They deserve a second chance and they want to do their best. And that's what we have Best Care here for in the first place. And I think this is going to be an excellent way for them to continue their services and just serve Prineville better. So all housing is important here, but this one more so than any of the other projects that I've seen come up. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And just for the record for council, again, I mentioned it earlier, you can only apply applicable law and criteria in regards to testimony and evidence. This is not a situation in which we weigh who may be in the housing. The applicable law and criteria is possibly 197A445, which would be whether it's affordable housing or not, but that has its own specific criteria in regards to that.
Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak in favor? Is there anybody on Zoom?
You might have.
Sorry.
My name is Carrie Bauer. I'm a resident of Prineville, Oregon for the last 48 years, and my address is 13676 Southeast Navajo Road here in Prineville. So I'm a county resident, not a city resident. I'm not sure actually if this is the time or if I should be talking during the neutral time. I am a mother of 3 of my 4 kids who lived a life like a lot of the people that we see on the streets here in Prineville. And if it wasn't for a residential program, now my kids went into, first of all, I'd like to say, by the grace of God, my kids are alive. My kids are sober and living productive lives in society. They have jobs with the union. They have all of these things, right? They didn't come from a derelict family. They came from a family who loves them very much. It's just that these mental health disorders, which often are disguised by drug use and things like that, are I'm thinking of my words correctly. I'd like to say this is not in my backyard because I'm not living on Studebaker Lane, okay? But it has been in my backyard. I lived through the hell of that. And I love our community. I love what our community stands for. I love being a resident of Prineville. But it is in our backyard. They are here. We are seeing this. And the only way for people to move out, now, not all of them want help, okay? They don't all want help. They do not all want help. But there is a level of homelessness and mental health issues that without a hand up, they're not coming out. To stand and say, if they would just get a job, are we going to hire them smelling like that? No, we're not. I'm not. Let's be honest. Okay? So I think this doesn't have anything to do with the zoning. This is just my heart as a mother and as a citizen of Prineville and seeing people walking around the streets that went to school with my kids. It just breaks my heart. And I would want to see some accountability, right? We'd want to see some accountability with what's going on in that living. And I don't know that that's even a topic. In my opinion, there would have to be accountability. It's not just a free for all, right? But I know that without a hand up, not a hand out, most of them won't come out. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you.
I guess I'm short. My name is Sarah Emmerich. I'm a resident of the county, not the city, but since you could talk, I thought I could talk. My husband and I haven't lived here very long, 5 years, I guess, 5.5. But I volunteer at Redemption House. And these are women from Prineville who have had difficulties in their life. And the stories will break your heart. But through the assistance, the care, the love, the consistency at Redemption House, these women have been able to move out into the community and become responsible citizens again. And there are so many in our community that housing here is absolutely unaffordable. That's fact. If you don't have a place to live, at our men's shelter, most of those men are working full time, but they can't afford housing. And if you add on top of, just the plain difficulties of living with the price of groceries and housing, you add in a mental illness and or addiction, and they're frequently tied together. This kind of housing is desperately needed. And it can make a difference. I absolutely believe it because I've seen the difference the helping hand a Redemption House makes in the lives of people here. And I'm lucky. I came from an intact family, middle class, educated. And so I personally haven't had to struggle like this. But a lot of that was luck. And I see this as something really valuable we can offer to our citizens. Thank you.
You. Is there anybody on Zoom that would like to speak in favor of this? None? Phone? Okay. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to come up and speak in favor? Okay. All right, now testimony for persons of Okay, sorry, testimony for persons opposing the application.
Only one testimony can be at a time. You both can testify back to back, but we have to just.
Here for support.
Oh, okay, so just she's talking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I just was trying to help out here. We need a clean record.
My name's Terry Black. I live at 1564 Northwest Studebaker Drive. My front yard is directly across the street from where Best Care is insistent that the non-fenced, non-managed Prineville cluster housing be built. This is my third time speaking to this committee to request a denial for a second unmanaged chaos center to be opened in our neighborhood. We have the men's shelter that is managed on certain days, not supposed to be open 24/7, but it is. A previous proposal from Best Care for the cluster housing was considered by our City Planning Commission and was denied. The denial reason was they wanted this property to be used for commercial use. Due to a loophole, the state attorneys decided for our city and its residents that no matter what our city decided, this cluster is going to be built on this commercial property. The Redmond Oasis is quite a facility. Driving past it, you see the living pod surrounded by a fence and an entrance and at the entrance of the pods, a nice on-site management building. Here's what the Prineville cluster looks like. Does anybody see our fence or on-site management? No. So pretty big difference between Redmond Oasis and the Prineville cluster. I wonder why that is. Why is that our city gets the worst possible solution? And I'm not saying we don't need to help our people, because I know we do. These are 9 pods. It's going to help some, but down the road, they are also building low-income apartments. Am I right? Many. Low income, that goes by their income. Anyway, anyone who lives in the area of the magical Prineville cluster property has seen what happens when there's an accumulation of rain and snow. The bottom of that property becomes a pond. So why is this property the only choice in our city? At our previous public hearing, we were told that the longevity of the Best Care offices on the Madras Highway are not permanent, and there's no idea how long these offices will be there. Wow. We also asked who would be managing this cluster. We were told that if a situation arises, the Best Care offices are located across the street and someone could be there in a moment's notice. If someone answers the phone, how long will it take for this someone to come and help? To be clear, Best Care is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. We were told 24/7. We live across the street. I haven't seen anybody there 24/7, but our final question was, when the Best Care offices across the street are no longer there, who will be managing the cluster then? No answer was given to us. The future dirt world has not been built, but by my neighbors shared at the last hearing that the Best Care patients trespass on their property while waiting for their appointments. Another neighbor also stated one of the patients followed his wife to work and the police had to be called. Why doesn't Best Care care about the property they bought for this cluster and the issues it has? Best Care was granted this money, so they need to do their basic due diligence in setting this up. Basic due diligence from Best Care is overriding our city's decision. Then once Best Care offices move or close, the city that didn't want this is left to deal with the mess.
Thank you.
Hi, it's been a long time since I've been up here. Aniko Murabi. I'm not going to give my address, but I live in Prineville and I've got lots of property around here. You all know that. So I have 2 questions I want you to ask of our lawyer, but I'm just going to say it. First, the fact that it is a leased facility that they have across the street and they don't own it, so it can vanish after their lease is gone. And this cluster is directly to be a part of that. I get it. So that's the first question. What happens when the lease goes away? And they change their mind, just as like what happened to Best Care up at the old hospital, which would have, in hindsight, would have been a great location for all of it. It all would have been under one roof and everybody would have been under security and supervised and 24/7 and kind of a revival of that old historical hospital. It had they had the right thing going there. Unfortunately, they lost that lease for whatever reason because the school went in. But they are where they're at old Tom and Charlie's place, and they don't own it. They lease it, and they got money from the state of Oregon, and they used it right away to purchase whatever was available because we all know there's nothing available to buy. And if you're an investor, that's just the way it is. So my first question is about the lease, and my second question is, or statement, I would like a clear statement from ODOT taking responsibility for not requiring a crosswalk across a highway. Because as we are seeing with Oasis, unfortunately, they have no sidewalks even to park on or walk on and to get to town, and it's so far out of town, and it's just really a stupid spot. But it is where it is, and until somebody gets hurt, nothing's going to get done about it. So before that happens in my town and somebody gets hurt, you all know how I feel about safety. That needs to be a clear statement from ODOT taking responsibility for these people playing Frogger across a highway. And I understand that lots of people around here walk across that road. I don't know why. There's nothing on the other side anymore. No more Tom and Charlie's. It's just Les Schwab. And that's the reason why there hasn't been accidents and whatnot, because those are people going to work, Les Schwab. I just want to say that we do support rehabilitation, and the city and the county must not approve housing models that shift supervision burdens and costs and risks onto the community without oversight accountability. We have the best police department, both county, state, and whoever else runs around here. I am grateful for them all the time to be on call when my son calls and says, hey, I got somebody out here that's being a pest. And again, I'm not a part of that business. I'm here as a private citizen. However, I have insight to what walks around town, what I've had to deal with. I don't pack, but I carry protection. This company did not, and it is a company, it is not a profit company. It's one of those lovely nonprofits that does not have to pay property tax like we pay property tax. And our property tax should afford us livability in this town, meaning safely walking around and not having to worry about running into your local psycho. And I get it. This happens. I'm from Portland. Most of my life. I've been here for 21 years now. I am a Prinevillian now, so I'm vested. And I don't want to see that kind of thing happen. I want to see people get recovery. I want people to come out and be a part of society if they can be a part of society. And there's a lot of people that can't be. And unfortunately, we've closed state hospitals where truly mental patients should go, not drug addicts, but mental patients should be allowed to go. And there is going to be a new one of those open up in Troutdale, I understand. And looking through possibilities for everybody, because everybody deserves a home. Nobody should be out in the cold, and my goodness, our snow is coming. And when I see the young gentleman coming out of the bushes down by the ballpark, and one of them was returning from military service, and just watched him just fall apart over 3 months. No help. But the homeless industrial complex of Portland is cleaning up their roads, cleaning up their tents, cleaning up everything. And Bend, since it's now District 5, part of Portland, is doing the same cleanup. And Prineville is always at the bottom of everything that rolls downhill. And we end up with it here. And what are we going to do with it when we don't have a place for it. We absolutely do need more affordable housing. I was very disappointed to find out that all these apartments that are being built are at market rate. Our market rate is $1,500 a month. Kids graduating from high school, my kid, his friends, even if they group together, can't afford it. We need $500 to $800 rent somewhere in this town. There was a lot of that before our friends up on the hill came, and a lot of those people who made a lot of money took those cheap rents. And now they're gone because it was temporary housing for them. But those cheap rents now are gone because those owners realized, hey, I can make more money. And you can't fault them for that. But we can say, hey, you know what? We're Prineville. We want our kids to graduate. We want them to have hope. We want them to have a place to live. They want to get out from mom and dad. Can we have some affordable housing, please? And I know people think whatever about low income housing, but we need it. It's great. It can be held to the same standards as full price housing. In fact, it should be because they're getting a break. My friend is paying $1,200. My other friend is paying $800 because she's low income. So anyway, just answering those two questions and saying hello to all of you again. I am irritated that these guys purchased this land with nonprofit money before they ever got zoning approval. They built it. They did it with the mentality that, oh, they'll just approve it. We can do that to Prineville. They'll just approve it. So they've already proven that they're kind of irresponsible, and you want to trust them to take care and keep an eye on these people from 500 feet away that's only open 8 to 5. And yeah, there's a number to call. You know, I've watched Best Care. My personal massage person went through their plan, and she's amazing. And she's been at the bottom. And so now I've finally seen recovery work, and that's what we want. People that go and seek it through AA are seeking it because they're ready for it. And when you have to impose it on them, they're not necessarily ready for it. And I'm sure, as our lawyer here knows about the new law coming out, or it's already out. Like we have, I forgot what it's called, but like people get, when they get a DUI, they get certain levels of going through their punishment, I guess is what you would say. Well, when people get caught now for drugs because of the repeal of 110 and no open drug use, they've got a different plan. And it's basically hearts without handcuffs is what it's called. And so you're going to have people that need Best Care to fulfill their obligation to their ticket that our wonderful police will be giving them. And I get it. These people need free housing because they can't house and go through their treatment, but are they going to really get the treatment that they need to go and be successful in society? Anyway, I've rambled on, and I will say goodbye.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in opposition? Oh, we got.
My name is Brian. I live in the Florida Terry and Ken here. I'm the second house down the street of Baker. I spend a lot of my times at night looking outside. Best Care's there, and I never see anybody there at night. So, got Bob and Bill living in these homes. They're getting in a fight. They make a call. Who's going to come and when are they going to come? Number two, okay, 500 feet. So they're over here. 9th Street's way down here. I don't know where Garner is, so that's not close enough for one. I mean, it's a freaking highway. There's a rule called the incompatibility and safety. There's children there. I was in the Bend Safeway when the shooting happened, and I just don't want to hear it. I mean, I know mental people and they need the help. I don't know why Best Care can't do it on their piece of property there. But if they're saying like it's a leased place and they're going to be leaving, then why do it now? It doesn't make any sense. The problem is Best Care bought the property before they did the plans. I work for a company that works actually designing stuff for Best Care. There's 3 different buildings. Redmond has a new one, Matters has a new one, and there's another one going in recently. My other problem is where is best care? Why aren't they here? Hello? That's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
Yeah. I didn't really know a whole lot about this before I came, but,
I'd say in your name, ma'am.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm Lorian Maxim and I live up at Iron Horse. But I have a very large concern now about the fact that, Best Care is leasing the property they're on. However, they purchased the property that they're going to build their cluster homes on. And I think it's a legitimate question to ask them about what are you going to do when you leave? Who is responsible for these houses? You own the land, you own the homes. What's going to happen? I mean, we need to have an answer for that. We can't just assume things are going to happen. We need them to tell us exactly what their plan will be when they decide to pick up and go somewhere else. Exactly. We need to know what it is. Because people like these big companies out there think they can push little guys around. Let's face it. And we need to hold them accountable for what their intentions are here and on a long-term basis. So I think we just need to demand accountability from them and what their plans are. And I think that should be something that, should be illegal, maybe not, but, anyway, thank you.
thank you. Oh. I thought Ken was coming up, so.
My name is Jeff Griffith. I live on Studebaker. I know that, there's homelessness, there's mental issues and everything and all over the US. And so I recently got back from Boston, went and spent a week there. I don't know what they do for their homeless and for their mentally issued people. But I do know this, that we went several places in the touristy things, and then we did a lot off the tourist site down. We rented an apartment off so that we weren't in the touristy thing. We wanted to do some of the off-site things. I'll bet you we saw 2 people that I can count in a week that I could say, they might have a mental issue. We rode the subway, we rode the buses, a clean city. And I encourage our city to find out what they're doing, to look a little deeper. I encourage Best Care to look a little deeper into what they're doing. They don't have these cluster housings that you can see. They don't have tent city off in the dirt and stuff. We were in those areas that you could have seen that. So, that's one city, a big city. We're Prineville. I was born and raised here. And, we've got the opportunity. We've got a great city, a beautiful city. I love every time I come down the grade looking into our city. Beautiful. We need to figure out what's going on. They address the situation. Don't hide it. Let's address the situation. And I agree. There's kids in that that park, the mobile park there. They have kids there. I have kids, my grandkids walk there. There's a bus stop right there. And these people are mental issued people. They have a problem and they're needing help and they're dealing with it. But that doesn't mean that we need to put our community at risk. The housing, they don't charge for it. What stake in the game do they have in our neighborhood? None. So if they're not paying rent, I don't care if it's, if they're paying $100, $50, whatever they can afford. But if they're paying no rent, they have no stake in the game in my neighborhood.
My name's Ted Hussey. I live on Studebaker. I've been here 32 years. The biggest, other than from what I've heard from her, is we have no legal claim to deny other than some magic key. Could that magic key be public safety? Because there's 32 kids right now that get on a bus right outside, right next door to where this best care facility wants to put their place. My kids walk by to get onto the bus there. Jeff's grandkids walk by there. The new apartment complex that's going in, that is the only access for all the kids. It's, what is it, a 300 or 320 unit? 28. Figure half of those units have a kid. You're looking at over 150 kids. That's the only access into town that actually has a walkway. There is no other way for kids to go, and they're going to be walking by these individuals that are not mentally all there. I've seen one individual down at Town Pump. He had an altercation with the cashier. Within 5 minutes, he's down on 9th Street. The police officers, they're more than aware of this individual. It took 3 of them to get him down to the ground. They're not meant to be around kids. They're going to be continuously around this facility that's not managed. I looked it up a second ago. Best Care is closed right now. You can't even answer. There's no one there to answer a phone right now. I've already moved. I know Best Care is not the men's shelter. I've moved away from the men's shelter once already because I've had people peering into my backyard. I've had insight of the people that are there, which are also Best Care's clients. The majority of them are pedophiles. I've had insight of people that worked at the men's shelter. That's concerning to me enough where I actually moved my family away from this once, and now they're wanting to move it into our backyard again. I fear for the safety for our kids. And it's not fair for them to grow up with this right in their backyard. The facilities, such was mentioned before up there at the old hospital, was probably the best place, right next to the police department. The old men's shelter was next to the old police department, sheriff's office. I never even knew we had a men's shelter at that point, or Best Care's clients. I see it as a huge safety concern for our kids.
My name's Stephanie Hussey. I'm his other half. I had to write an itemized list because we've already gone through this once, as I live on Studebaker Drive with about half of the people here. And just reiterating what my husband said, when we found out that this property was purchased, but Best Care running it is leasing, and specifically in the documentation, they say in the future they may not be managing it. They don't know who will. That's concerning. There's no responsibility there on their behalf to make sure this is continually run. They said it could change hands. They say in the future it could be switched over to affordable housing. We did see through the presentation that that's not an option due to the floodplain. And I've lived there since 2008 on and around Studebaker. Every single winter that floods, we've taken our kayaks out there with our kids and have paddled around. Not a good place for that to be. And what is concerning for me too, the zoning, we have all heard that that's zoned for commercial. I don't understand, maybe as a layperson, why putting a residential there right on the highway is now being considered. And I am with one of the other people. I would love to have a written document from either ODOT or Best Care saying that they're willing to cover the cost of the ambulance and the medical fees for when someone crosses, whether it's an employee of Best Care or if it's a client of Best Care crossing to get over who gets hit by one of the semis going 65 that isn't slowing down in time. That's terrifying. I did call the bus barn, and my husband is right. There's 33, 34 kids actively who use that bus stop. There's a bus stop at 7:40 in the morning, and there's a bus stop at I think it's about 8:15, 8:20 in the morning that goes to the high school and middle school. This is all ages. We have kindergartners who are 5 and 18-year-olds who all ride the bus. The only parents who are required to be there to pick up their kids are those of kindergartners. Most of these kids are latchkey kids. My kids at 8 and 9, I trust them on that stretch of property or on the highway to slowly walk with their gaggle of friends, just grandkids too, to walk to our house on Studebaker. And when this goes in, that will no longer be an option, and I will not feel safe having them there without someone on site to say, hey, leave those kids alone. Hey, not your job. The other part that is really concerning for me, my husband manages the RV park there, Grace Place RV Park, and we've gone through the tenant stuff. We've gone through evictions. We've gone through this without a rent payment plan, without a contract, and without sober living requirements. How bad does it have to be for these people to get kicked out? Is it destruction of property? Is it altercations? Is it violence? At the last hearing, the representative from Best Care stated, these are people who in the past have not been permitted to live in a apartment environment due to their violent nature. Putting them in a 9-unit space where they're sharing a bathroom, if you heard correctly, restrooms and laundry facility, and asking them to share, cohabitate that space, that doesn't seem like a bright idea. The call time for police, we have a great police department. It's across town. Years ago, my husband got a call from a tenant saying there's someone behind my house and I need help. And he went over there as the landlord, and he had a gentleman pull a knife on him, and he called the police, and it took them over 15 minutes to get there. That's not due to anything wrong with our police department. That's just the logistics of driving from town or they're outside of town. I don't think that Best Care, even if they had a police officer or an armed guard, would want to come into that situation and try to settle that person, not knowing exactly how much time are they going to have to look into their medications. Are they violent? Are they having hallucinations? There's a lot of things that are just unknowns. I would love to see a place where people have the housing available to them. Work it like the Pregnancy Resource Center. Go and learn, earn your keep, earn the ability to be there as far as put in the work, and these opportunities are there for you, but not making it a requirement to try to stay sober, try to be productive and reintegrate into society. How many people have we seen locally that are career houselessness? And I'm not saying that to be mean to them. I'm saying that because it is the same person, if you look up on mugshots, that are getting arrested for criminal mischief, violence, theft. There are resources that are out there to help them, and they're actively choosing not to take advantage of those because they are comfortable in their lifestyle. All in all, I see that there's a lot of gaping holes in the long-term management strategy for this facility. If Best Care, if that attorney, or if they would like to open their backyards to these people and let them stay there, I want that for them. But when my kids have to walk by that to go to school, and I have no ability to know whether people are safe there or not, or if they're under the influence of anything, that does not make me feel comfortable as a parent. And I don't feel comfortable having people crossing that highway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot something. And the lady was talking about the Oasis one in Redmond. I don't know if
Just
people
for the
remember.
record, can you restate your name?
Brian, I live on Studebaker. About a month and a half ago, there was a person that lived in the Oasis part that ran across the road on the highway right there that caused an accident. The one person did die. So just wanted to let people remember.
Is there anybody on Zoom that would like to give testimony in opposition of the application? Phone? Do we have anybody on the phone lines? Okay. Someone was asking a question. All right, so we will move on to neutral testimony and questions. If there's anybody that
I saved mine for neutral because I'm the sheriff of Crook County. John Gottney is my name. And I try to be neutral on this because this is a land use issue. The way I understand it, it's your decision whether this is zoned properly or not. So that's your decision, and I'm neutral on that because that's not in my ballpark. What I did want to say is, being the sheriff, I run the jail in the city, in the county. And Best Care is the CMHP for county, the contracted organization that provides mental health for the county, for citizens of the county. And doing that, they work very closely with our jail staff, with our correction staff in community corrections. They work with the clients. Many of the clients are in the treatment facilities that are treatment classes that they have. And having done that, we've had many meetings with Best Care about having this sort of a facility in the county somewhere, because we need people to be able to be off the street and have treatment. Whether this is the proper location for it or not, that's for your decision. And I'll give you a little story about this. It's a personal story. About the last 2 years, I had a family member, a niece, who, based on things in her life over the years, made some very bad choices and ended up getting a mental health based on prior drug use over the years. She did not have the ability to get help here locally in Crook County through Best Care because they didn't have a facility to get her off the street. She was living in a tent up Crooked River in the middle of the winter. I thought she probably was not going to survive the winter. She ended up going to Bend, getting into the center over there. They got her into treatment, in care of treatment, got her into housing now. She has housing, she has a job. So this is why this is about. It's not so much, and I agree, many of these people that talked tonight on both sides have good points. You guys all had good questions. And if I lived down on Studebaker, maybe I have a different view of it. But my point is, we can't save everybody that have mental health issues. But if having a residential area somewhere in Crook County where we could get people off the street so they could get the help they need through treatment, and we save just one person, we've been successful. So, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Hello, my name is Dawn Mounts. I live on Sunrise Lane in Prineville. And I felt compelled to speak because I'm on the board of Redemption House, the men's shelter on Madras Highway and the women's shelter on First. And someone mentioned that the men's shelter is not managed, there's maybe managed part-time. That's not true. If there are guests there, we have paid employees that are at the facility. And it has been there now for, well, over 5 years, 5 to 6 years. And some of the guests there are clients of Best Care. And so they travel across the highway. And I'm not sure how they do it, but no one's been hit, going from the men's shelter to the Best Care facility. And I will say, so I've been on the board now for about 10 years, and I come from a business background, sales and marketing, and I had no, previous experience in social services. And I think you would be surprised at who these people are. I know I was. There are people living in the shelters who work full time. In the men's shelter, it's about 75% of them. And they, there's just not enough housing. And so, I would just encourage everyone to, just be open about who these people are. I know, it's easy to get the mindset that, it's like the boogeyman, but in most cases, it's not. It's, I'm sure, I don't know, but I'm sure Best Care has criteria for who will qualify to go into these, to this housing. And, a good question would be, how would they, what's the criteria for them to not qualify then? What sort of incident would then disqualify them from staying into those homes? Because we have, at Redemption House, we have, if someone's, if we find they're using, or they come to the shelter and they have used, or they can't come in. So, and if, and on the third time, they can't come back. So if they come to the shelter and they've been using. So, and last thing, the people that they're here anyway. I mean, they're not going to be bussing in mentally ill people from other communities. They're already here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience that would like to give neutral testimony?
Hello, my name is Ryan Eldridge. I live on 416 Northeast 10th Street here in Prineville, Oregon. Before I start, I'd want to say it sounds like Best Care has a very, very noble goal. I believe their intentions are good. Their intentions are pure. I believe on paper, it sounds great. However, there's another saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. All right. And just because they say it's going to go one way doesn't necessarily mean it will. I would hope everything works really, really well. My biggest concern is going to be the attitude that Best Care has so far. There's obviously the public safety sentiment in the crowd. Everybody's talking about the crosswalk and how dangerous it is. And I agree. And I believe that Best Care shouldn't have the attitude of, oh, well, nobody forced us to make the crosswalk, so we're not going to make the crosswalk. I mean, is it Best Care, or is it nobody told us to care, so we're not going to care? Like, make the crosswalk, maybe try to win over some of the community here. Maybe try to win hearts and minds instead of trying to just kind of shove this development in. And you might be right legally. Best Care, it sounds to me like they're right legally that they can build this. But maybe try to do it the right way. Okay. Maybe make the crosswalk, not because you're forced to, but because it's the right thing to do. Maybe have a little bit more transparency. It sounds to me like these aren't even affordable housing. It sounds like they're off-site hospital rooms. You got 9 different buildings. You got shared bathrooms. You got a shared laundry space. Like, is that a housing? It sounds like a hospital to me, but that's besides the point. I would urge Best Care to please, do the right thing as we go forward. Go above and beyond. Okay. Don't do the bare minimum. Because God forbid, if somebody tries to cross that street and it's dark and it's icy and if somebody gets hit or slips or something happens, I mean, Best Care is going to have blood on their hands, figuratively, but that's just what it is. Like, I urge them to do the right thing. Thank you.
Sir, before you go away, you mentioned your address at the beginning of this. which is obviously within city limits. Can you
Correct.
clarify that you're talking as a city resident and not as an employee of the city of Prineville?
Oh, yes, 100%. This is my personal opinions as a city resident.
Thank you.
Yep.
My name's Carrie Bauer. I just want to double dip for a second. I want to say that the location is a terrible idea. Okay. I also want to say that my grandkids don't live on Studebaker. Okay. Location's terrible. Grandkids don't live on Studebaker. Best Care Treatment Facility was the first step, many times, many steps of going into treatment and into detox and into recovery. And so I realize we're not talking about drug treatment here. Okay. I realize that, but that was one of the, well, lots and lots of jail time too. Okay. Lots of arrest, but that was like the beginning steps with Best Care towards who my kids are today. So thank you for hearing me.
My name's Mike. I've lived in the city for 43 years. Jared, I got a question for you, and it's about vicarious liability. We've been sitting here talking about people going across the street, and either they get hit by a semi or the semi moves out of the way and it crashes and the guy in the truck gets hurt. Or the kids waiting at the bus stop and something happens there, unfortunately. What kind of liability does Best Care have, knowing that we've been discussing this all evening and probably before this meeting as well?
I can't give legal advice to Best Care, sir, especially on a public hearing. They're not my client.
I think my point was made.
I have a question. Sorry, Terry Black, Studebaker. How come when this was drawn up, didn't we have the same, like a fence? I mean, there's no fence. We get shrubs.
I'll make some clarifications just because it's been coming up a couple of times. There is a fence. This will be fenced. It's one of the requirements.
Fenced all the way around then.
Yes, all the way around. There are bathrooms in each unit. They are isolated. The laundry facility is the only thing that's separate.
And what about on-site management?
And there is no on-site management. The only thing that Best Care mentioned in our planning commission meeting is that could be something if they were asked to, but it's not something we can require. And that goes back to some of the issues with the control of this facility. You can't really require them to manage in a certain way. They can say they're going to do it, to Ryan's point, but you don't know what's going to happen and they can change 2 years later. So,
So how
some-
come our city can't say no? I mean, aren't we able to run our city the way that we feel best? Or is it Portland that thinks they know best for our city? I just want to know. I mean, I lived here since 1961. I should be able to ask. This is a great place. My kids have all been here. Family's been here since 1941. Why do they get to come in and tell our city what to do? Why?
Yes, and so this is a conversation we've been having with Best Care kind of offline on, like, do better, to Ryan's point, on communicating with council, communicating with county, to John's point. They are a needed thing, to everybody's point, really. This is a needed facility. The location is the problem. And the location, from the zoning perspective, is why it was denied. The safety issues are there because we don't understand how this is going to be managed by Best Care and that link. If this was a normal residential complex, we would not be talking about crossings. We don't normally do that. That's especially for something this small. It's only 9 units. But that link with the facility is what's causing that safety concern. And we don't know the severity.
Why can't they build it on the property that they're leasing? There's an area back there. That'd be perfect. No crossing the street, no kids in the bus stop. Why?
And the reason they gave us at the meeting is that they need to own the property. That is something that could happen. Still a possibility. This decision does not end that possibility. The problem is they submitted an application for a housing development, not a patient development facility, and we are looking at this strictly from a housing perspective.
I just want our city to be our city, not their city to tell us what to do. Sorry.
We agree.
You're fine. Just a recess, correct?
Are you asking to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna take a 5-minute break and suspend the public hearing and come back, reopen the public hearing for any more testimony that needs to be done. But 5-minute break for everybody.
Thank you. Quiet down. Right, so we were in neutral testimony and questions about this. Is there anybody else that would like to continue on with neutral? Is there still anybody on Zoom or the phone that would like to speak to us? If you're on Zoom and you want to testify, either raise your hand or come off of mute and let us know. Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the applicant's rebuttal. So, Mr. Peterson.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. I'll be relatively brief. I would like to just start by thanking the two speakers at the beginning and then the sheriff and the woman after him at the end there who have some understanding and compassion for the unmet need in this community. I want to talk a bit about Best Care and what kind of operation they are. This is not a fly-by-night operation. Best Care has been in business in Prineville since 1997. They have many locations across Central Oregon, Bend, Madras, Redmond, Klamath Falls. They serve both people with mental health needs and also substance abuse issues. I know one of the women spoke from her heart about the help they gave somebody in her family with substance abuse issues. They're well regarded in the state for providing quality services and running a really tight ship. So I don't think it's fair to characterize Best Care as, like I said, some kind of fly-by-night operation that's going to disappear tomorrow. I also want to do a little more clarifying of exactly what kind of housing this is. This is not transitional housing for people like in an analogous situation like people straight out of prison. This is longer term, 90-day plus housing for people that are already moving up from transitional housing, and this is their last step in their rehabilitation to full independence. So these people who are already made a fair bit of progress on reintegrating into society in a safe way. I did want to touch on the crosswalk. One of the gentlemen suggested that if Best Care cared, it would just build one. Well, it's not quite so simple. Best Care just can't go out willy-nilly building sidewalks across state highways, nor can the city of Prineville authorize them to do so, right? That's an ODOT controlled facility. And in order for a crosswalk to be built, it needs to be approved by ODOT, and ODOT has not said that they want any crosswalk on this facility. And it's not like the 9 or so people that would be living in these units are the only people that are ever crossing this highway, right? This is a public road. There's plenty of people in the community who may have a desire to walk across the highway, and so providing for a safe passage across the highway is a public responsibility. And if ODOT was inclined to require one, then I'm sure Best Care would consider it. But it's not a question of just offering it up and having it accepted, right? It's more complicated than that. So I just want to redirect the City Council's attention to Ms. Kellington's analysis. She said it plainly. You have to approve this project unless you received some evidence that one of the clear and objective criterions might not be met. And I'd recommend that the council go back and look at that one slide that was provided by Mr. Smith that listed the objective criteria that apply here. Things like setbacks and building height and so forth. Did we hear any testimony or any evidence that any of those were not met? No, we didn't. So I don't see that the city council has but only one option here, and that's to follow the law. And the best part of it is that by following the law and approving this project, you're also going to do some good for some vulnerable people in your community that will benefit. So we look forward to building this project and having Best Care be a productive member of the community and helpful to some of your most vulnerable people. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. All right. Do we need to, Mr. Ross, do we need to hear from Mr. Rossi, the architect or designer?
It's up to the applicant of how they would like to do their rebuttal.
Okay.
So it doesn't.
I have no additional comments.
Okay, thank you. All right, so council questions while on the record.
I'll ask one to Mr. Peterson. Best Care is funded largely by the passage of Measure 110. Is that correct, sir?
I have no idea.
It appeared that way from my research. I'm just concerned that we've already seen Measure 110 slightly repealed, but if it's reformed additionally, could the possibility of Best Care dissolving, do you see that happening? I understand that you said they've been operating here since 1997, but it would be a concern of mine if a facility like this is started and then Best Care lost funding.
This is Mark Rossi. So we design these places so in the event that funding did fail, that they could turn around these and use these and rent these out as single family homes, like tiny homes, in the future if funding fails. So they'd turn around and use as market rate housing at that point.
Thank you.
That we designed them that way so there's a loft upstairs that they could turn into a place upstairs they could turn into a loft, more usable space.
Mark, real briefly, just to come off this on the side of that one there's a deed restriction requirement for 30 years.
There's that too.
Do you know how that applies if they are no longer using it?
That part I don't know because I don't have anything to do with their funding applications.
And I'll just clarify, it's a 20-year deed restriction for the state grant. The 30-year restriction is the affordable housing statute.
I don't know if my question should be here or council deliberation. I think it's more deliberation. I don't think it falls under this. Either one's on the record, correct?
Both are on the record. It's just once you close public testimony, there's no the back and forth.
Okay.
You can still ask questions of staff, but
This is more of a, for sure, it's all wait till deliberation. Any other questions from the council members?
Yes, I have a question. The absence of a safe crossing. Well, ODOT has not required that, when in fact we are now dealing with a specific category of housing for mentally ill patients, which is not what ODOT would typically be dealing with in general categories. Is there not the ability to revise specifics requiring something of safe crossing, of a safe crossing? I mean, because when I see when I read the material they presented, they talk about a 500-foot separation. Well, the 500-foot separation does not permit someone to go from the housing project down to 9th Street and cross at 9th Street and then go back up to the treatment facility. So they're not talking about using a crossing category. They're just talking about going across the street. That to me is flat. That's not acceptable. And you know, they're talking out of two sides of their mouth. They're saying, hey, we're not required to have this because we've got this crossing at 9th Street that's not designated.
9th, Gardner, and Studebaker.
Not, okay, 9th and Studebaker. So,
and I'll just answer briefly, Council Muffleman. My conversation with, you had conversations with ODOT at one point, and we had conversations with, numerous of them. They provided new comments. And basically my conversation verbally with them was they did not, it's not that they didn't want a crossing, because actually in our transportation systems plan, there is one closer down by 9th Street planned. It's that they didn't have a reason or a nexus to require it. Couldn't put it on the application. Now, a normal housing application, you would not require one. It doesn't meet the threshold. It's too small. Even the large apartment complex down the street did not require it. They did other things in the community. They have the path because they have no reason to cross, right? The weird thing about this one is there's a nexus, like they're tying it together, but it's not tied together.
But
And
there
that's
is a
what's giving our
requirement to
problems.
cross. There's a requirement to cross to and from the treatment facility. There's a requirement to cross to and from the recreation facility. So yes, there is a requirement to cross.
Yes, and I don't know what legal requirement we can put them on. That's what ODOT could not find. And that's why their comments does not mention it. It's not the matter of whether they want it or not. It's that they couldn't require it in a land use decision.
Why can we not, in as much as this is our community and our site, require and say, if you're going to build that facility, you must provide safe travel across the highway with a clearly marked highway crossing for vehicles traveling at 40 miles an hour, which is the speed zone.
I might have Wendy answer this, but basically the answer would be you can, and it will likely get appealed and overturned.
So be it.
You're supposed to stand up when I talk.
As long as you're in the microphone.
Where do you want me?
I can be up top.
Okay,
The audience can see.
All right. So the crosswalk, this is ODOT's domain. And so ODOT is the agency that even after you make your decision, can make a decision when these guys go to apply for whatever access permit that they need for the highway. I assume that they'll need one.
So they've actually said they don't need a permit. There's already a permitted access.
There's already one. Well, typically what would happen is that when you go to get your access, ODOT would review the application and make a decision about things like whether you need, improvements to the highways, sidewalks, crosswalks. It's really weird, I think, that ODOT's taken the position that they have, but it's their facility, and the city doesn't have a codified standard that was in effect at a time, and certainly not a clear and objective one that would provide the city the ability to write a clear and objective standard for a crosswalk. And ODOT I don't know, may or may not honor it because it's their facility. And so I guess the reason why, much as it's a really good idea, it's not a legal idea, and it wouldn't move the safety ball forward because we would not be able to hold on to it. It would last for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months while the question was pending at LUBA. LUBA would reverse it, and then the city would pay a pile of money for the privilege of having, ventured into ODOT's domain. So I wouldn't recommend that condition because I'm not aware of any codified standard in the city's code that would give rise to it that was in effect at the time the application was submitted, or a clear and objective basis to do it. It's possible, I think, that ODOT may reconsider its position. It hasn't, so far as I know, made a final decision. There's a funny case out there that's pending right now at the Oregon Supreme Court about whether requirements that are imposed on access, on streets, on things like highways, are subject to the clear and objective requirement at all. And the Court of Appeals said, nah, they're not. When we're talking about development of housing, that those standards have to be clear and objective, but when you come to the public street, the sky's the limit, it doesn't matter. I think probably the Supreme Court's going to reverse that determination, and I'm actually involved in that case, full disclosure, but it's the point of me telling you that story is I think it's possible that ODOT, when cooler heads prevail, might take a different position and might require different things to include possibly, they might reconsider and decide that the crossing is justified. I think that that's still a possibility out there. I don't know it, but that seems intellectually like you. I mean, I have the same thought. It's like, gee whiz, it seems like it would make an awful lot of sense for ODOT to have that requirement because, yeah, there's only nine units, but the 9 units are, irredeemably, just connected to what's happening across the street. You must go across the street, I don't know how many times every day, at least Monday through Friday for your treatment, or maybe several times a week or something. It seems like ODOT would want something, but we don't.
Hey, Wendy.
Our job tonight is to make a decision based on the city's codified clear and objective standards. And you asked legal, so I'm going to tell you, you don't have any of those in your code to apply. But maybe
Hey, Wendy.
I'll do that later on.
Wendy?
And just to somewhat come off Ms. Kellington as well in regards to an explanation and why this also becomes somewhat convoluted in the thought process is this is a housing application for the 9 units. It actually has nothing to do with Best Care. It's on its own, it's housing, and that's where the 400 comes from. Now, the affordable housing analysis arguably is connected to Best Care. However, the city staff has already recommended that 447 doesn't apply simply because of the 100-year flood zone. And so you're really looking at this housing development based upon the code within the commercial zone, Prineville code, and whether that has clear and objective standards. And if you have a clear and objective path that they don't meet, then you can utilize discretionary standards at that point. Based upon Ms. Kellington's advice, she advised that the city does not have a clear and objective pathway and therefore does not have discretionary standards to be able to develop or utilize. Therefore, you have to ask yourself whether the housing application meets those clear and objective standards or not. And that's where this application and operation of the housing continues to get unnecessarily intertwined.
And I'll add on to that, the reason we have a project overview from Best Care is because we knew the applicant was Best Care and I asked for it. So I knew they were going to do it. I wanted to be upfront and transparent with everybody who was going to be using this, because the fact of the matter is they could have built it under a different name. You know, they could have done it completely off the cuff and just or bought the trailer park and just used it for their purpose, which I think they are probably using some of those. So there's ways around that. To be fair, we were open and honest about what was being done so we could actually have that conversation. It's not, if this was in the city street network, it wouldn't have mattered because we'd have crossings and all that would be available. This just happens to be on a section of highway that part of our original decision on denial was because it was highway commercial. We didn't want it there. And that's the part we're getting. I think everybody kind of agrees this is a bad location, but the need is there.
So the last thing to leave you with is if you feel as though your staff was right, that there are no clear and objective standards that apply that could be used to deny the proposal and you have to approve it, you have to know that you still retain all of the authority you always had for chronic nuisances. If the facility, causes nuisances in the community, you have the right to enforce. Or if there's chronic trespass, the police know how to handle that sort of thing. And you do, you've heard, you've got a good department, you've got the sheriff who's on deck. And so you have all of the enforcement mechanisms to deal with the externalities that have been expressed as concerns. If those happen. And you've also heard a lot of people say they don't think those things are going to happen. So to the extent that's helpful.
Any other questions from council? All right, so I will close the
I'll
public.
give the applicant one last, just in case they had any rebuttal for what we just heard, but.
No, I don't have anything to add.
All right, I will close the public hearing portion of the meeting. Council deliberation. My very first question is, I wanted to ask, do we have to make a decision today? Are we under any type of Oregon revised statute or law that tells us that today we have to make a decision, or can we have a little time?
Would you like to start?
Yeah, you really do. You really have to make a decision. And I mean, I don't know what your schedule looks like, but you need to have a final decision I think by the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and there has to be time to write findings to support your decision. And you're already, I mean, there's already very little time to do that. So I think we're really kind of under the gun.
The reason being is because of the Aluba.
Yeah, it's a 90-day
Okay.
thing, yeah.
Well, that's what I was getting at. Is there a time period that we've been pushed up against?
Yeah.
So. Any deliberation for council?
So just prior to that deliberation, just to finalize that timeline, just so that we're all on the same page. I believe what we had chatted about a couple of months ago, or when we set this schedule, is this is the opportunity for council to make a decision in regards to directing what types of findings they are making. And then, depending on that decision, those findings would be presented at the November 18th meeting for formal adoption, but the decision is still, in essence, made tonight.
And to go even further than that, I think on your, if it's approved, the recommendation is to have the applicant actually create those findings.
Yeah, that would be traditional. If you decide to approve it, the applicant can be asked, instead of paying your staff and me to write those findings, to have the applicant write them consistent with your direction, which I assume will not to be a finding about the applicability of this affordable housing statute with, the 445 that folks have been talking about, but with respect to compliance with the clear and objective standards, and then to get them to your staff for their review by a certain date. I think it was 17th. And then you would adopt them at whatever meeting thereafter, after it had been vetted. But that's very typical in land use cases. It just, it's a little bit of a time and money saver for local governments to do it that way. And we'd vet them.
And is this our time to talk? Okay.
Yes, sir.
This is a tough one, having been someone that's lived in those shoes before. That's a hard thing. Of course, being a mayor, I don't sit up here and share my whole life's history with everybody. Except for when Jeff Kaufman retired, I shared a little bit that night, but I know that doesn't have anything to do with the land use thing. I'm very disappointed that I didn't have a chance to ask Best Care questions before this. I have so many questions now that I know don't pertain to a housing development, but it absolutely pertains to it. So I have those questions. That being said, I know we're pushed up against a deadline, but I'm personally not ready to make a decision until I get some questions answered from them. And that's my personal opinion, but I can't speak for the rest of the council. I think this is, someone said it in the audience that this is, someone up higher trying to push us around. And that's fine. And I do agree that we need the help. I have friends that have used that help, family members. And I love it. Love that they're willing, but the person has to step up and want to be helped too. And that's the big thing. So if they do, great. I support that 100%, but I don't see any accountability in any of this. And that's the part that scares me. And I know that has nothing to do with it, with a land use decision on the housing, but I have to say what my questions and concerns are. I'd wish I could talk to the Best Care. And I know that we have their counsel on the line, but that's not the people I want to talk to. So, but with that said, Jared, I don't know what to do. I guess we have to.
Council's
Yeah.
discussing things.
Okay, please.
So I don't like how this played out at all. We heard tonight the words clear and objective multiple times. The position that we're in is a position that we can't win, or, a win for what I've heard most of you tonight. If we deny this application, it will go to the Land Use Board of Appeals at the state level. We've been informed by our attorney. We have a very minimal chance of winning this in litigation. And that puts at risk more tax dollars in attorney fees and that sort of thing. What this has done is exposed how we can change our code. And I can assure you that is happening. Whether or not we're going to be able to keep up with state law changes, which we obviously haven't been able to do because they're changing so rapidly in this state. The only path that I can support is not risking tax dollars fighting this. I don't like it, but that's where I'm at.
And I would agree. This that leaves a horrible taste in my mouth. And I've spent a lot of time researching and working through this, and I wrote a statement that I would like to present. We are dealing with a mentally ill patient facility. And as an elected official, I am ethically and morally responsible to protect the safety and well-being of this community. What I observe in the planning application, in addition to the direct violation of our zoning code, is a major safety risk that is knowingly being thrust upon the city of Prineville by Best Care, its staff, and the members of its board of directors. I read the proposal from Best Care. Mentally ill patients who are under the care and responsibility of Best Care. Best Care does not want housed in immediate proximity to their facility. Rather, they propose housing them across a 40-mile-per-hour highway with no safe crossing established to either their medical services or their recreation facility. This proposal knowingly, and I repeat, knowingly places the patients at risk as well as the vehicle drivers who are to avoid mentally ill patients crossing a 40-mile-an-hour highway wherever and whenever they choose to begin or to gain access to Best Care facilities, as there is no safe corridor established in the plan. I hope those who funded the purchase of the commercial property were made aware of the hazardous and risky dynamics being developed by this project. Our attorney's advice is that there is a loophole that will be exploited in an appeal to LUBA to overturn whatever denial we produce, and that we should not oppose the permit. And as much as I would like to oppose the permit, our hands are tied, because all we're going to do is spend the community's money on a lost cause, a lost effort, not a lost cause, but a lost effort. So as much as I would like to say no.
And I agree with both counselors. I really do. But morally, I don't like the idea of legislatures in Salem telling us how to develop our city. And I have a hard time facing you folks. Some of you don't even live down there and you've come to speak in opposition, of saying, okay, the cost to the city turn out to be $100,000 in lawyer fees. That's all you're worth. So I don't believe there, with this federal issue going on and all that, I keep hearing somebody's quoted that if you don't like the law, change it. I don't believe the city of Prineville has the horsepower to change a law that doesn't build our community, that doesn't allow us to build our community correctly. And this was zone C2 so that we could build, and sure, you guys are all out there in residential now, but somewhere down the line that changes and we develop that to the betterment of our community on the highway with commercial businesses. I don't believe the city of Prineville has the horsepower to go to Salem and change this. But I feel like I have a duty to stand my ground. And I know as an elected official, I took an oath to obey the city of Prineville laws and the state of Oregon. But I can't in this situation. I just don't think it's right for our community.
Thank you.
Well, I think that no matter how you look at it, we could pay $100,000 and lose. And it's going to be forced anyway because of the way it's been interpreted by Luba. And so we're trying to turn this too much into a social issue, as I hear tonight. And it's a land use issue. And we don't have control of it. It's been advised to us that if we try to fight it, likelihood of winning is pretty scant. So I am not in favor of spending our taxpayers' money.
It will change. When a board member is sued because somebody walks across the street and gets killed, and the family members are going to file suit against not only Best Care, they're going to file suit against the board members who approved this project moving forward. And that's what it's going to take. And that's what will happen. But we have no control over that at this stage.
What I have a problem with is the main facility is leased. And this is a purchase place, and who says they have to stay where they're at in that lease? I'm sure they're probably thinking of some other options in the long run that would take them from a lease position because they have no control of a lot of things. You know, it's been suggested that that piece of ground be used, it's landlocked in there, that's right off the parking lot of the current site of their office, main office. Yet, and we've talked about it before, that if you're going to make improvements on leased property, that's not good business. So I don't think they're going to do that. I don't know what their plan is. It'd be nice to know, but
And I like the idea, you know, because I hadn't thought about it. And thank you, public, for showing up and bring it. But where it is leased, the property owner, you know, who knows? You know, at one time it was a very successful restaurant and all this. And who knows, that may change. And then, you know, what do we, I'm as concerned as anybody, we got these little, that I don't think is ideal for even low income housing, but
I don't see a reason to delay it, to be honest, Mayor. I think that we have to make a decision, and I think we know what that decision is, so.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah.
So I don't disagree with what all the other counselors say. I agree with them. We're caught between a rock and a hard place. And if we listen to our council, then the decision is to approve it. And we'll wait until we have the vote and see if that's what it is. But I want to thank all of you guys in the audience that came up and talked. There was 16 of you. And it takes courage to go up to that podium and state your feelings and the research that you've done and everything. So thank you all for doing that. That's the only way we become educated also about what's going on in the area. So thank you very much for that. And I wish we had clear direction from the state on how to handle this instead of getting the I'm just going to say double talk that we got from them. So we could only go with the best course of action advised by the state at the time when the application first came in. And that's why the first decision was what it was. So I'm sorry to all of you that it's not going to be a decision probably that you like. but it's not one that we like either. So that's it.
And I agree, and I agree with everybody. It's all been well said. I'm gonna make an assumption here. I think what happened here, I think Best Care, the property people, they got a grant and they had to get it spent. I think they probably bought this piece of property. And now they don't have any way to deal with it, to get out of it. So I would, if that's the case, and I'm right, and you're still listening, I would like to see if there was some opportunity for you to trade that piece of property to the one that's on the next to your facility, to where you could have these people right there on the facility and have more of a dorm type facility instead of this housing, because I think the residents would be better served. I think they would be a lot better taken care of, the safety issues, and I think it'd make it a lot safer for our community. So maybe I feel like everybody else does here. I don't want to make this decision, but I think we have to approve it. But I think the one thing that we learned from this, we're going to have to get busy, the city, and try to get our horses caught up the best we can. So when this happens again, or even if it's a different type deal, to get codified with what we can do at the state, because the way it is, we're just butting heads and we're going to lose every time. Once again, thank all you folks. Appreciate all your input and stuff, and wish I could make a different decision, but I can't.
And I want to say thank you to Josh, our planning director. I know I've come in a couple of times and we went over this and over this. And, you know, Josh he knows what's right. He lives here in the community, plans on living here, I'm assuming, for quite some time. And, you know, he wants what's best too. He says, couldn't find that correct, clear and objective pathway.
That's right.
Once again.
That's right.
Are we done with deliberations? I'm ready to make a motion.
Well, go ahead and say your motion, because I wanted to clarify in regards to kind of what we were hearing and what sort of findings we possibly could use a little bit more clarification. So go ahead, and what was the motion you were?
I was gonna move to approve the application 2025-100 for a 9-unit multifamily complex presented by Best Care.
The motion might also consider saying that you do not find that the application triggers ORS 197A 445 because the property and some of the development is in the floodplain.
Oh.
And direct that the applicant write findings consistent with that, presented to staff for their review by the 17th of November.
We would actually need it earlier than the 17th of November.
Whenever you need it.
Yeah, so yeah, there's a couple of things. One is in regards to the findings, if the city or if the council is approving the application based on ORS 197A 400 due to clear and objective standards being met, that is part of it. Also finding that ORS 497 445 A445 and A460 do not apply. And then also making the findings in the rest of the staff report. That could be, albeit a convoluted motion, that would be the motion for approval. And it's directing the applicant to present those findings to staff by, it really should be by the Friday prior to the 18th. So it would be the 14th of November, because it would be presented at the November 18th council meeting.
Anybody want to take a stab at that one?
You're writing it down.
So
I can't write as fast as the attorney can talk.
So the motion for approval of the application would be pursuant to the findings within the staff report, which state that the application meets ORS 197A 400 and that it does not meet 197A 445 or 197A 600. You're adopting the rest of the findings within the staff report and asking the applicant to present those findings for staff review by November 14th. And if somebody wishes to make that motion, they can use the term "so moved."
So moved.
Second.
So that this will come back to us.
Yes.
We're not saying yes to the application. We're saying yes to, you need to prove to us.
No, you would be approving the application based upon that motion, and then the findings would be presented on the 18th for formal adoption. And frankly, you could only, at that point, deny that if it wasn't consistent with the findings within the motion.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. So I think it passed, right?
It passed 4-3.
4-3. Motion passed. Josh, are you writing that down?
Yep.
Okay, and we're on recorded too.
We are on the record, sir.
Mayor, I move to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
Okay. A motion and a second to adjourn. Thank you all for being here. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.